In the previous video, I'd given the whole ukulele a couple of coats of Danish oil. As Danish oil is made up of varnish as well as boiled linseed oil, it builds up a surface film, and I wanted to remove this film from the frets, so I used an old chisel to scrape it off. Then I could refit the machine heads, and I mentioned in the previous video to this that these had been fitted the wrong way round. Unfortunately, I couldn't swap them over as they wouldn't fit on the headstock the other way round. So this is a mistake that I'll have to live with. Then I could glue the nut in place. I used a CA glue for this. To file the notches into the bridge saddle, I put my file into a vise. I had originally intended just to use oil on the ukulele, but I ended up applying some brie wax on top of the oil to everything apart from the fretboard. This would add a bit more protection to the wood, and also I find that using wax leaves a smoother finish. I applied this with an old cotton t-shirt in a circular motion, and then after a couple of hours I could buff it up. And the neck felt really great after that, really nice and smooth, and it looked good too. The wax had added a nice even sheen to the whole body. And to finish up, I refitted the saddle and the strings. Prior to this project, I'd never fitted strings on a ukulele before, but I found a useful YouTube video which explained it really well. Two of these strings, the B and the E, are nylon, and the other two, the D and the G, are wound strings. The nylon ones were easiest to fit at the bridge, but they took an awful lot of stretching before they would hold the tune. The wound strings were a bit awkward to tie onto the bridge, but I found that a pair of pliers gripping the end of the string worked well, and the wound strings tuned much better than the nylon ones. They didn't require as much stretching after they were fitted. So that was how I built this ukulele, and despite some minor niggles, I'm really pleased with it considering it was a first attempt. Hopefully at some point in the future I'll post another video of someone else playing it too. I've asked a couple of close friends if they'd like to play a song or two on it for a video, so fingers crossed. It was a time-consuming project, and whenever I do a really big project like this, I like to follow it up with lots of quick projects. So please subscribe if you haven't already to see some of those in the near future. In hindsight, if I were to build it again, I'd definitely build it in the conventional way, that is making the neck, making the body, and then attaching the two together, as my methods resulted in some pretty awkward glue-ups and it wasn't particularly thought through as well as it could have been. But that's just kind of how I tend to work. I like to get stuck into things and then learn from my mistakes. It's a little bit erratic, but things usually work out okay. I didn't know when I started the build that this would turn out to be a baritone scale ukulele, but that's kind of a happy accident for me because it gives me string tunings that I'm a bit more familiar with, being more of a guitar player than a ukulele player. In terms of flaws and mistakes, there are quite a few. For example, one of the fret markers was glued in the wrong way. That is that the side grain is visible instead of the end grain, so it's lighter in colour than the other markers, which is a shame. The fret markers are also a little bit too big for the frets, and I wish I'd made them slightly smaller. I don't think the body is perfectly straight either, as I pretty much reference everything by eye, so it might be a little bit wonky, but that doesn't affect how it plays or sounds, and you have to look quite carefully to even notice. The dovetail joint I cut in the neck was also cut a little bit too wide, which meant that I had to keep the end of the fretboard quite wide to hide it. But I actually quite like how that looks. It's different and an interesting design feature, I think. As I explained in a previous video, the machine heads are also the wrong way round, which is a bit of a shame, but having played it a few times, I'm already used to twisting them the opposite way, so that's not a big deal. As far as finishing is concerned, all I can say is that the wax really made a difference. I wasn't too happy with the feel and finish until I applied and buffed out the wax, so I'm really glad I did that. I'd definitely like to make another instrument in the future. In fact, I've already been thinking about building an electric guitar, but I don't think I'll do that so soon after this project. But having built this ukulele, there are definitely a lot of lessons learned that I could implement in the next instrument that I make. I've uploaded some detailed plans featuring dimensions to my website, just in case there's anyone out there who might want to build a ukulele similar to this one. If you do, I'd suggest you learn from my mistakes, particularly the one about building the neck and body separately rather than what I did. And I would absolutely love to see pictures of your own builds. There's a page on my website where you can submit photos of your projects, and I'd love to feature them there, or even if you don't want them to be featured on the website, I still love to look at them. I've already received a few projects and featured them on my website, and some of them are really interesting, so check that out.